Welcome into the Yards After College podcast powered by KSLSports.com. I'm your host, Kyle Ireland. Happy to be back on the podcast after a couple of weeks off. Sorry about that. I was feeling under the weather. Just want to give a quick shout out and a big thank you to Trevor Allen, who's not only our Utah Utes insider, but also host of the Crimson Corner podcast. He was kind enough to fill in for me on week number 7's coverage of the NFL season on KSLSports.com. But we're back, ready to roll, and we've got an exciting week number 8 to talk about, to recap from this NFL season. Today's episode, we're going to recap week number 8. We're going to preview week number 9. We're almost to that midway point of the 2020 NFL season, so big things are happening right now, and we're going to be joined today by none other than KSL Sports Beat anchor, Locals in the NFL expert, Jeremiah Jensen will be joining the program today to cover not only who he thinks has been the surprise local in the NFL, but also kind of talking about some overall thoughts on this 2020 NFL season with, COVID-19, this pandemic, the fact that we're in the middle of an election season. So excited to have JJ on the program today. But let's get rolling with a little thing I like to call instant replay. Kicking off this week's Instant Replay, we're going to start with former Utah Utes. We've got Zach Moss, former Utah running back, all-time great there up on the hill. Now with the Buffalo Bills in the middle of his rookie season, the Bills have a 6-2 record after they ended up defeating the New England Patriots 24-21. Moss had a big game. It's actually the first game that he has had a rushing touchdown in the National Football League. Zach Moss had 14 carries for 81 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground in the Bills' 3-point win. Another Utah Ute defender, or former Ute that is Eric Rowe, now a safety for the Miami Dolphins. Rowe had 7 total tackles, 5 solo tackles, 5 pass breakups, 5 pass breakups, and an interception to go along with those stats in Miami's 28-17 win over the Los Angeles Rams. The Miami Dolphins, kind of a surprise. They're now 4-3 on the season, and Rowe's defense has been an excellent part to that start in 2020. Now moving on to the other side of the rivalry, we've got former BYU running back now with the Green Bay Packers, Jamal Williams. Williams had 16 carries for 75 yards and 6 catches for 27 yards in the Packers' 28-22 loss to the Minnesota Vikings. Former BYU defensive back, now a safety with the Kansas City Chiefs, Daniel Sorensen. He ended up having 9 total tackles, including 8 solo tackles, to go along with a forced fumble in the Chiefs' 35-9 blowout victory over the New York Jets. The Chiefs are now 7-1 on the season. Kyle Van Noy, now with the Miami Dolphins, former BYU linebacker. He ended up having 9 tackles, 5 solo tackles, 2 pass breakups, and a big fumble recovery in Miami's 28-17 win over the Los Angeles Rams. Former BYU quarterback Taysom Hill, he ended up getting into the end zone in the Saints' 26-23 overtime victory over the Chicago Bears. It came late in the game. Hill ended up finishing the game with 5 carries for 35 yards, and he also had 2 receptions for 30 yards to go along with that touchdown. That's going to do it for this week's Instant Replay, wrapping up week number 8 of the 2020 NFL season. We're going to take a quick timeout, and on the other side, we're going to be joined by KSL Sports Beat anchor Jeremiah Jensen. Welcome back to the Yards After College podcast powered by KSLSports.com. We're now pleased to be joined by the one and only, the great Sports Beat anchor, Locals in the NFL extraordinaire, Jeremiah Jensen. You can catch him, all throughout the week as far as Sports Beat's concerned, but you don't want to miss Sunday nights because all of the locals in the NFL and all the great highlights from the league are going to be shown by JJ and Sam Farnsworth when they go over the locals in the NFL. Happy to have JJ on board the program today. How are you doing, JJ?
I'm well. It's been quite a year for locals in the NFL, so I look forward to talking about the first half of the year.
Yeah, I wanted to start with, a more general question before we dive into some of these local guys individually, because this has been an NFL season, a year unlike any other. We all know that the pandemic has caused so many differences, in, how we operate day to day, but also how we watch sports, how the athletes are playing in these games. What are your overall thoughts now that we're almost, we're about the halfway point of the 2020 NFL season? We've had, I feel like, a crazy rash amount of injuries. We've also seen, how COVID-19 has impacted games as far as postponement, players going onto the list that these teams have. I mean, Fred Warner was part of that earlier in the season. What do you make overall of just your general thoughts of this 2020 season and all the things that have kind of gone into it?
First, I think I'm just, as an NFL fan, I just have gratitude that it actually happened. We're how many weeks? We're 8 weeks in, and it's still going on. And there's been hiccups along the way, but we still have NFL football. And imagine how difficult life would be, especially, you mentioned the pandemic, but all the stuff we're going through politically, it's negative and that can drag us down. To be able to have an NFL season, I think you've noticed the difference. It's just nice to have that to look forward to each and every Sunday. And despite all of the challenges that the NFL has faced, not having fans in the stands at most games, some of the players that have had to miss time, some postponements and stuff going on, all that considered, it's been a very entertaining and fun NFL season. I think it's been really compelling, and I've enjoyed it so far.
Yeah, and I think that we've had some great individual storylines, some cool, moments as far as these locals in the NFL are concerned. And I want to start there with the quarterbacks, because I feel like you've got BYU, Utah, and Utah State all with relevant quarterback storylines in the NFL. And I wanted to start off with Alex Smith. And I know you followed Alex Smith throughout his time from at the University of Utah all the way to where he's at now with the Washington football team. We saw the documentary come out in the offseason about his injury and his comeback. But a few weeks ago, he was able to step onto the field, JJ, and he was able to play a game. What did you think of that moment? I saw you tweet out, how, just amazing that was for you to see that after all you've seen from Alex as a quarterback up on the hill to, coming back from this injury. What was that moment like for you as somebody who's covered Alex Smith for a long time?
Just as a human being, I was just inspired. Somebody that has gone through so much, who nearly died and then nearly lost his leg and then should never have been able to play sports again. He overcame all of that. He's able to go take a snap as a quarterback in an NFL team, in an NFL game, and play almost an entire game. He was sacked 6 times, and he was able to go through that. I can't imagine what that'd be like in your mind, after you've been through something so devastating, and understanding the risks that are involved in going back out there and having the courage and drive and motivation to go back and do that despite all those challenges and all those risks and concerns. You don't want to get too hyperbolic of, because I reserve the word hero for, people who save lives or people that, give up their lives and fight for our country in the military. But it was heroic in my mind, honestly. And on top of that, just the absolute miracle it is that he was even doing it. I think it's one of the best stories of the NFL so far. And, we'll see what happens. I know, they got their quarterback in Allen, and he's going to be the starter, but it would be really fascinating to see if Alex gets another opportunity, gets some more snaps. But even if he doesn't, this is one of the stories of the year in the NFL, and it's going to inspire a lot of people and motivate a lot of people that maybe are going through some hard times. So just that alone makes it all worth it. But what an inspiring moment that was. Certainly one of my favorite moments.
Yeah, somebody who isn't taking any snaps so far is Jordan Love with the Green Bay Packers. Now the Packers are 5-2. Aaron Rodgers is slinging it all over the place. He's doing well, but Jordan Love has been inactive in all of these games. Is that something that, Utah State fans, NFL fans for the Packers should be concerned about, or are they just bringing him along really nice and slow?
Yeah, I think that's the right way to do it. Look, I mean, Jordan, he's still very young and inexperienced, and to think that he was going to get a lot of time this year. I mean, we knew how this was going to work. Aaron Rodgers is one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. Right. Thank you. So to expect anything different, I didn't. This is a great opportunity for him to learn and develop behind one of the all-time greats. What better situation do you want as a rookie quarterback? There's no pressure on him right now. He just can go learn and get better. And he's in one of the better organizations in football too. It's not like I mean, Joe Burrow's doing a great job in Cincinnati, but if you're a rookie, you don't want to go play in Cincinnati. Can you imagine playing for the New York Jets right now? So for him to get a chance to play with points, we know he's the future quarterback in Green Bay. And when that time comes, he's going to be ready, just like Aaron Rodgers was ready when it was time for him to take over for Brett Favre. And I think that the plan is similar, and I think that Jordan will be up for it. And he's got all that time to develop. So while we're not going to see Jordan on the field this year, likely, we're going to get to see him be even better because of it in the future.
Another guy who's playing behind an all-time great is former BYU quarterback Taysom Hill. Now, I feel like JJ, and I talked about this with Mitch Harper a couple of weeks ago, it just feels like Taysom Hill is kind of being utilized differently this season than he was last season. I don't know if it's just we haven't seen as many touchdowns from him thus far, and that's why it feels that way. Have you seen a difference in the way the Saints are using him? Do you think that his prospects as, a future starter for the Saints has changed at all in the last, 8 weeks?
So I'll tackle the first part of your question. I don't think they're using him any different. What I think is the NFL knows who he is. And there are teams that game plan for him. They got game film of him for 2 years. I mean, when this first started and Sean Payton was using Taysom Hill in this way on offense, special teams, nobody knew who he was. Nobody expected this. And now you got 2 years of film. Everybody knows who Taysom is. And he got the big contract. So you have a combination of the rest of the league is figuring out how to defend these Taysom Hill plays. And I think there's also some pressure on Taysom to live up to this contract and some of that. So I think there's been an adjustment there. But in their last game, you saw him catch a 20-yard touchdown pass. I mean, they threw a ball to him over the middle. So I think they're making some adjustments and finding ways to keep him involved. I don't think it's any different that he's being used. I just think the league has adjusted to it. The other part of your question, I don't think the plan has changed in New Orleans. I think that Sean Payton has a lot of respect and has high hopes for Taysom and believes he can be a starting quarterback. It's just a matter of when is Drew Brees ready to call it a career. To be blunt, Drew Brees is not the same quarterback he was 5 years ago, even last year. He has dropped off a lot, and I think this is going to be Drew Brees last year. I really do. I think you can see him slipping. And it's being discussed in the league. And I think Drew Brees is going to be a broadcaster next year. And so that's going to be Taysom Hill's opportunity to become the starting quarterback next season. And Taysom Hill will have that chance, and we'll see what he does with it. But I think that's the plan in New Orleans.
We're joined by Jeremiah Jensen, Sports Beat anchor, and you can catch him on TV at KSL5. And you can also follow him on Twitter at JJ Sports Beat. A couple last quick questions to go rapid fire with you before we let you loose. JJ, appreciate you joining the program today, but I want to know who's the biggest surprise for you this season as far as these locals in the NFL are concerned?
That's easy. Julian Blackmon. Not a surprise that he's doing well, but so you go back, it's only been 11 months since he tore his ACL in the Pac-12 championship game. How in the world had he go from doing that to starting 3 weeks into this NFL season and contributing to one of the most surprising teams in the NFL and one of the best defenses in the NFL? Julian Blackmon has two or three picks this year already, and he's moved into that starting spot in the Indianapolis Colts defense at free safety. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, I believe in Julian Blackmon. I covered him since he was in high school. He's just an exceptional athlete and human being. But man, I did not expect this to happen. I thought, when he got drafted, I thought that's awesome. And then he'll get a chance. Maybe he'll sit out this year, get a chance to get the knee right and really take off next year. But he had other plans. And it's a great story that he's been able to jump into the league and do this. So Julian Blackmon, by far, my biggest surprise.
So moving on to, our follow-up question to that, who's the best rookie of the year? Is it Julian Blackmon or is it Zach Moss, any of these other guys?
Well, it's a tribute to all these guys that have entered the league. I think you got three guys that stand out right now. I mentioned Julian, so I'll move on to Jalen Johnson, who's been tremendous with the Chicago Bears and helping the Bears really exceed expectations in my mind. Jalen Johnson, I think, should get consideration for Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year. And Zach Moss, he missed 3 games because of that turf toe issue. But since he's come back, he's getting their goal line carries and hit 2 touchdowns last week. And I think that Zach Moss is going to continue to get more and more carries as this season goes along on a team that's going to be in the playoffs and could win a playoff game or two. So Zach's in a tremendous situation. By the end of the year, I mean, it could be Zach with the amount of touches and carries he might be getting for a playoff team. But right now, I'm going to give Jalen a slight edge over Julian, but it's very close. And I think Zach could sneak up and pass them both. But what a tribute to the University of Utah to have 3 rookies in the NFL right now that are having such an impact.
Now, we've got nearly 30 guys in the NFL from the University of Utah, a handful of guys from BYU, Utah State, SUU, also Weber State, and these high schools out of the locals in the NFL. But, which guy stands out to you as far as the most improved?
Most improved. Oof. So if you're going to ask me who are the best locals in the NFL, I'm going Bobby Wagner and then follow it up by Fred Warner. Fred Warner took a leap last year. I can't say that he's the most improved this year because he's right along those lines of being a Pro Bowl player.
Tim Patrick or Devontae Booker even, who just I feel like he's getting some touches this year.
I've got one. Tim Patrick's great, but you know what? I'm going to go with Garrett Bowles, the Denver Broncos. Now, it's not going to stand out because, he's not scoring touchdowns and you don't see his statistics in a box score. But I think he was on the verge of being out of the league based on his performance the last couple of seasons in Denver. And now he has been a force at left tackle for Denver. People in Denver are raving about his improved play. He's grading out as among some of the best linemen in the NFL. And now he's going from, is he going to stick in the league, to how much money is he going to get paid in the offseason? So after giving it some thought, I'm going to go Garrett Bowles, but I do like Tim Patrick being a number 1 go-to receiver this year. Cortland Sutton being out has obviously opened things up, an opportunity for him in Denver, and he's certainly been up to that. But Garrett Bowles is my guy, is the most improved local in the NFL this year.
Last thing before we set you loose, JJ, and again, appreciate everybody, being able to, discuss these locals in the NFL on a week-to-week basis is really fun. We had Sam Farnsworth on at the beginning of the podcast in the preseason to go over, Super Bowl picks, MVP, those types of things. And there's been some surprises, I think, as far as some of these teams are concerned. I didn't think the Steelers would be 7-0 at this point. I actually picked the Cowboys and the Chiefs to be in the Super Bowl, and obviously the Cowboys they're letting me down big time, and that pick is not looking good as they're 2-6 right now. Do you think that we'll continue to see the Steelers, the Chiefs, these teams like the Packers and Saints at the top of their divisions as far as the playoff races are concerned throughout the final 8-9 weeks of the season here? Or do you see any surprises where teams drop off, other teams, end up making a comeback, like maybe the Raiders, who are 4-3 right now? Can they make a push for the playoffs? What's your prediction as far as like the biggest surprise as far as teams are concerned with who's going to drop and fall away?
So here's my pretender. I don't think the Bears are that good. And right now the Bears, I think they're tied for first place with the Packers, or they were last week. I don't buy the Bears at all. If I'm going to go for one team that I think could come out of nowhere because of the talent they have, I would go with the Minnesota Vikings to make a miracle run to the playoffs, because there is an extra playoff spot this year. And I think that needs to be noted, that there is an extra opportunity in this COVID season to make the playoffs. So if you're looking for a 2-win or a 1-win team to go on a crazy run, I'm going to pick the Minnesota Vikings.
Ooh, last place in their division right now at 2-5. I like it. That's impressive. They did it. They have a big win last week.
They did, and that's going to help them. Adam, they worked the Packers. The Packers are a good football team. That gives me confidence. And you look at their receiver core: Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson. Kirk Cousins is hot and cold, but what if they get hot? I just think they have an opportunity to do that. And if you're, again, I'm looking for a long shot here. I don't know that they're able to make it, but with that extra playoff spot, and if they get hot right here, I think that's a team that has the talent and would be capable of it. That Packers win was really impressive, and I think they have enough talent to turn things around.
JJ,
sorry, it's not going to be the Cowboys.
No, you're great. I feel bad about my pick now, and I even said Patrick Mahomes for MVP, and now I'm like, I should have said Russell Wilson. I was kind of thinking it, but it's crazy how NFL storylines change week to week. And can you tease for our audience, our listeners, what you've got planned this week as far as locals in the NFL and SportsBeat?
Yeah, it's a steady thing every Sunday during the NFL season. It's going to be on SportsBeat. We start around 10:45 after the news, after the KSL 5 news every Sunday night. It's going to be there. We're going to have it. Also, we when time allows, we usually run locals in the NFL right after NBC is done broadcasting the Sunday night football game of the week. So you can see it there as well. So we run it twice every Sunday, and it's been fun to do this for the last 15 years now. We've been doing locals in the NFL on SportsBeat, and another banner year for locals in the NFL. It's been a joy to cover, and you can watch all these guys every Sunday night on SportsBeat.
Just like his Twitter profile says, he's your friendly neighborhood sportscaster at KSL 5 SportsBeat Sunday. Don't miss it, and catch all the highlights. Follow him on Twitter at JJ SportsBeat. Thanks for joining the Yards After College podcast, JJ.
And Kyle, great job with the podcast and all the work you do on KSLSports.com. Appreciate having
me on. Welcome back into the Yards After College podcast, brought to you by KSLSports.com and the KSL Sports app. You can download the KSL Sports app on your iOS or Android device. Just go to the App Store, type in KSLSports.com, whether you have a Samsung device, iPhone, iPad, you name it. We've got you covered with the KSL Sports app and on KSLSports.com. Big shout out to JJ for joining the program today. You can follow him on Twitter at JJSportsBeat. Be sure to tune into SportsBeat. You don't want to miss Sunday night, especially around 10:45. We've got NFL highlights, all the locals in the NFL, any big plays they make, but also all the big hits, the big touchdowns, all of the plays that you want to check out and recap from the NFL games through Sunday evening. Before we wrap up today's program, I wanted to just kind of go over some of the big storylines in the NFL as we head into week number 9 of the NFL season. You've got Jamal Williams, who was out for the Packers Thursday night football matchup with the 49ers after being a close contact. Current Green Bay Packers running back A.J. Dillon, he ended up getting placed onto the organization's COVID-19, that reserve list, and ended up, putting Jamal Williams' game versus the 49ers in jeopardy, as he was also placed into the team's COVID-19 protocol. On Friday, November 6th, Jordan Love, fellow Green Bay Packer, also former Utah State quarterback, was also placed on the Packers reserve/COVID-19 list. Now, the team doesn't give any specifics on this information, but they put out a statement stating that Jordan Love was now being placed onto the team's reserve/COVID-19 list. Per the NFL and NFLPA's policy, clubs aren't going to comment on any of the medical statuses of these players other than referring to what their status is on the roster. So now that Jordan Love has been placed on the team's COVID-19 list, he'll have to go through that protocol before he's able to be, around the rest of the team, the players, be part of any potential game action, anything like that. Love, as we've mentioned before, has been inactive in all of Green Bay's games this season, but something to keep an eye on as we move forward. We'll have this covered on KSLSports.com. Another big story coming out of the Thursday night football matchup between the Packers and 49ers was something about Fred Warner, former BYU linebacker. Now, a couple of weeks ago, Trevor Allen put a piece up on KSLSports.com as I was out about Fred Warner and Tony Romo. Tony Romo, obviously former Dallas Cowboys quarterback, now a NFL broadcaster. He ended up calling 49ers linebacker Fred Warner the best linebacker in the NFL. That praise for Warner has continued as, former quarterbacks, not only another fellow quarterback from the Dallas Cowboys, Troy Aikman, but also current Green Bay Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers praised Fred Warner. During the broadcast, Aikman said, "He's having an all-pro season." The color commentator continued talking to play-by-play announcer Joe Buck by saying, "We haven't seen everybody, Joe, but I will tell you this. What I've seen of the middle linebackers in our league this season, he has been the best that I've seen." After the game, Aaron Andrews of Fox ended up interviewing Aaron Rodgers, and Rodgers was complimentary of the 49ers. San Francisco's obviously been depleted by many injuries this season, but Rodgers ended up saying, quote, "They still have possibly the best middle linebacker in the game." So a few quarterbacks, Tony Romo, Troy Aikman, Aaron Rodgers, now with some really high praise for Fred Warner as the best middle linebacker, or in Romo's case, the best linebacker in the NFL this season. Now, last thing before we wrap up today, I wanted to go over a couple of games of the week that I have for you. I think that there are two games that I want to definitely keep an eye on and I wanted to touch on today in the podcast. And the first one is a matchup between a pair of 6-win teams. You've got the Seattle Seahawks, who are 6-1 this season. They're traveling to New York to take on the Buffalo Bills, who are 6-2, also 3-1 at home this season. Currently, they're both, fighting for playoff spots, top of their divisions. You've got the Seahawks with an NFL caliber quarterback in Russell Wilson, who's, just been playing lights out this season. That game's going to start at 11 a.m. on Sunday. You can catch all of the action on Fox. And then the other game that I wanted to touch on is a pair of, Hall of Fame quarterbacks. You've got a pair of greats here going at it on Sunday Night Football. You can catch this game on Sunday night on KSL 5 TV. It's going to start at 6:20 p.m. and that's a matchup between the New Orleans Saints. You've got Drew Brees going up against Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You've got both of those players. They're atop the all-time passing touchdowns list. Tom Brady and Drew Brees have been going back and forth on the list, number 1, number 2, number 2, number 1, all season long. You've got Tom Brady, who's now atop of the list, and Drew Brees is one passing touchdown away from tying Brady on the all-time passing touchdowns list. So fun matchup there on Sunday Night Football. The Saints are 5-2, Bucs are 6-2 on the season, and Tom Brady, you've got the New England Patriots who are struggling, and Tom Brady and the Bucs, they seem to be doing pretty well after that Week 1 loss to the Saints. So fun matchup from that Week 1 game. It'll be interesting to see who comes out on top. Obviously, the Saints, handled business in the season opener, so we'll see if that ends up, repeating itself, or if the Buccaneers are able to, pick up that win. They're 3-0 at home this season, so it'll be interesting. You can catch all of the action on KSL TV, and we'll have that game covered for you as well on KSLSports.com and the KSL Sports app. That'll do it for this week's episode of the Yards After College podcast. If you haven't done so already, please give the podcast a rating, a review. Any of that information helps get the podcast out to other listeners who are interested in finding out about this podcast, and also, just hearing about the locals in the NFL and how they're doing. We like keeping tabs on all of these former Utes, Cougars, Aggies, Thunderbirds, Wildcats, you name it. If they played ball in the state of Utah, whether it be prep or also at the collegiate level, we have that covered on the Yards After College podcast and also on KSLSports.com. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Kyle Ireland, and then on Instagram at Kyle Ireland KSL. We'll be back again next week to recap all of Week number 9's action. Follow all of these locals in the NFL this weekend on KSL Sports and the KSL Sports app. Until then, this has been the Yards After College podcast, powered by KSLSports.com.